We have breaking news from Israel this morning where 4 hostages have been rescued from Hamas captivity in Gaza after 246 days. The Israeli army says the hostages were freed earlier today in raids on 2 Hamas sites in central Gaza. The 3 males and 1 female, were abducted from a music festival in southern Israel during the deadly Hamas raid October 7th. Israeli military spokesperson Daniel Hagari says the rescue operation was conducted under fire in a neighborhood and that Hamas had been concealing the 4 Israeli captives among civilians.
Noar Gamani, Almog Meir Jan, Shlomi Ziv, and Andrei Kozlov. They are back home in Israel. They are alive. They are well.
Families of the rescued hostages arrived at a hospital in the Tel Aviv area earlier today to be reunited with their loved ones. All 4 are said to be in good health. Let's bring in Robert Riggs, our Middle East geopolitical risk consultant. Robert, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me on.
Your initial reaction to this, that 4 hostages have been rescued and alive and healthy by the looks of it.
I think as a human, I'm very happy to hear this for the sake of their families who have been protesting and demanding that the government of Israel prioritize the release of the hostages from October 7th. And now we've reached the 8-month mark yesterday. And it still seems like the Israeli government is prioritizing the military campaign against Hamas over making a deal to release the rest of the hostages. And so it's a great news that 4 of them were alive and in relatively good health. But notice they were all younger people. Whereas, what about the hostages that were older and sick and injured in the attacks? These are things that are still, causing a lot of rifts within Israeli society.
Have we seen or heard any indicators as to how they located these 4? And if they know where any of the others are located?
Well, they've been doing a lot of military activities in central Gaza in the last several weeks. And so I would say they said in one of the reports that it was a complex operation. And so I would assume that it involved Israeli police as well as military. And so I would assume there was probably potentially some local informant that helped them pinpoint where to go, but they still took a lot of fire, and I think that they had some injured soldiers from it, and quite a few Palestinian civilians were caught in the crossfire and killed as well. So this is the perils of urban warfare, which is what we've been seeing for the last 8 months, when you have a guerrilla force embedded within a small territory and has tunnels underneath it.
And a difficult situation. They said they were hidden amongst civilians. Does that mean the civilians knew they were there, or were they unwilling participants in this?
That's a really good question, because undoubtedly the population of Gaza know, for example, that in a house or in a several-story building, one of the residents that lives there is a member of Hamas's military, and he might come home for dinner, and that could cause an attack by an Israeli jet, for example. And so, how much are they able to do anything about that knowledge is the question, because in Gaza now, of course, things are very chaotic because the governing bureaucratic structure of Hamas has, I would say, mostly collapsed in the Gaza Strip itself. There's a lot of people on the outside that are making a lot of noise in Syria and Qatar and Turkey, but not on the ground. And so, there's when they were in power, and if somebody tried to challenge their authority, there were very harsh punishments for it. Hamas is known to be a very vicious and ruthless ruling group.
Does this change anything politically on the international stage, at least for Israel?
I don't think it changes anything. Israel's still being, sanctioned by UN agencies, or at least heavily criticized. One UN agency just came out saying they were going to hold both Israel and Hamas responsible for the poor treatment of children during war. And so, there's also the U.S. at the Security Council is now haggling with China and Russia over trying to get their resolution passed to call for an immediate ceasefire, that one that Biden announced a little over a week ago. So those things are all still in motion. But I think from the Israeli civilian population's perspective and the government, they are not going to stop this war until all the hostages, meaning alive and dead, are home. And they've said that very clearly. Gallant has been absolutely ironclad in saying that over and over again for the last 8 months. So unless suddenly Hamas decides to release all the hostages and tomorrow, this war is going to probably continue.
Okay, Robert, thank you as always for your analysis.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to speak on CTV.